I'd like to talk a little bit about change.
Give me your coat. I'll take it.
Change
Put it around my
that we've
waist.
seen, because I'm a part of the generation that saw the destruction of much of our timberlands. And I'm not proud of that, but I was a part of it. I don't have any problem apologizing for the role I played. Many people seem to have a problem admitting that they were a part of the destruction of probably the greatest natural resource that this country has. So as I talk about change, I'm going to talk about some of the things in my childhood and some of the things that happened, my memories that mean so much to me now. I'm sure that most all of you can relate to these. I hardly ever read a speech, but I'm going to have to read some of this. When you have change, it can be three types of change. It can be good, it can be bad, or sometimes we just find change because we get kind of humdrum and let's do something a little different. It's a neutral thing. But from the time that I was born in Oak Ridge in 1927, the mountains of that area, of the three drainages that I spent my youth in and my adult life, were precious to me. In 1928, my father and mother, with horses and a Boy Scout troop, headed into the Waldo Lake area. At that time, they had with them a milk cow. The reason for the milk cow was because they had a 10-month-old baby on the saddle in front of my father. That was my first trip into the Waldo country. From that time on almost a yearly basis, it was my pleasure to be able to go into the Waldo country with horses, into a country that seemed to have not changed for hundreds of years. And through those years of the 30s and 40s when I was going in, there were things that remain with me. It's maybe just plain nostalgia, but I think most of you can relate to this little thing I'd like to mention to you. When you would leave with a horse from Oak Ridge, you entered the wilderness area. We were the Oak Ridge city limits was in effect the boundary to the wilderness area in the Salmon Creek, Salt Creek, and Middle Fork drainage of the Willamette River. Our horses had to go 30 miles to get to the place that we camped. When you would start up on a warm July day, you would notice the smells of the forest. As you went through the bottomland along Salmon Creek, the large tree, the moss, the ferns, the Oregon grape, there was an aroma, a moistness, a closeness to our nature. And as you went up in elevation, this changed. The forest is a changing thing. And as you climbed into the madrone areas, the smells were different. The amount of moisture in the air was different. And in the forest, there's always something. No matter how quiet you may think it is never quiet. You hear the bees and you hear the birds. You hear the wind as it rustles through the trees. That never changes in the forest as long as the forest stays with us. In 1947, when I came back from the service, was my last time to go into the Waldo Lake area before the change that we are here concerned about today occurred. I could leave Oak Ridge at the same way, and I went into the same country, and it was all there for me. In 1947, Pope and Talbot, the owner of 35,000 acres of land in the Middle Fork of the Willamette National Forest, or the Middle Fork of the Willamette River, started operation of its sawmill. At the same time, the Forest Service started cutting the Salmon Creek drainage. For the next 15 years, every year that you would go into the Waldo Lake area, the roads had gone further up into the country. And it was another clear cut. The trail was always blocked by another clear cut. In 1953, the city of Oak Ridge, a group of citizens working together, instigated the first Oak Ridge tree planting event. When that event occurred, there was a reason for us to be involved in that event. We had been taking from the forest And we felt, a number of us, that it was time to replenish, to do something in return. It was a minor effort, but it had a lot to say about what people should do. We thought cutting at that time was right, because we'd been kind of lulled with the lullaby of lumberland. And it was a very simple thing. There are certain ways that you manage the forest. It's for multiple use, it's clear cut, and we were told by the people who we worked with as we organized our tree planting event that we had a 100-year sustained yield program in effect. That 100 years from now we would still be cutting timber. We believed that story. This story came from, I think, at that time, well-intentioned Forest Service people and not so well-intentioned, greedy corporate structure people. But through those early years of the 50s and into the 60s, we continued the effort as we felt was right. In the 60s, another thing happened which began to change my mind and the minds of many. The city of Oak Ridge's first water system was installed in 1935. In 1964, that system was gone. It was gone to the flood of 1964, and the city at considerable expense had to go to well fields. We lost a considerable amount of the line, plus the fact that our source of water was fresh, clean, cold water from Salmon Creek, just above Salmon Creek Falls. That disappeared. It disappeared because of what? Because of the clear cuts of the Salmon Creek drainage. The city council, of which I was a member at that time, met numerous hours and many times with key personnel from the Forest Service. Never once was there an admission of the relationship to the loss of our water system to logging. It was always a smile and, well, there's nothing much they could do. Well, nothing was done, obviously. When we reached into the 70s, what had happened, and I became mayor at that time, was the obvious. And all of us began to ask questions. Can this sanity go on forever? There is a limit to the trees of which we have experienced in our whole lifetime as being a part of our life. But that recognition was by a very small number of people. As what we needed at that time were you people. People with open minds and a willingness to go out and do battle. And our generation was not ready to do that because economy came first to our community, and that's the way we lived. However, as we reached the 80s, everything began to change. And from here on, I think most of you people know. Yes, sir.
Real loud.
Real loud, okay. I'm sorry. But in the 80s is when the real change came to the forests of our state. And the greedy land people that were cutting trees began to run out. Pope and Talbot, who had claimed all along that they were here for the long haul. They told me this personally when I was mayor of Oak Ridge, that we are here for the long haul. Closed that operation in the late 80s. Now what happened to all those trees? 35,000 acres of timber that had been destined and we had told would not be cut over a 100-year period were gone. The first 14 years of their operation, they planted not tree one. There was nothing to replace those trees. The Forest Service, making an attempt to treat the problems of clear cuts, did do a lot of tree planting. But what did they plant with? They planted with super trees, the Douglas fir that they had developed time and time again to say these are better than what Mother Nature put on these lands. They knew not of what they told us. The sad thing is that we still sit and tolerated the practices that were occurring. And it wasn't until finally people like you, with a willingness to challenge authority, to challenge the law that we had, came forward and made the older generation, of which I'm a part, wake up and realize that something needs to be done. And I would have to say, in all honesty, I have been a reluctant supporter of zero cut because I have believed all my life, from the teaching of my father, that this resource was there to be used. I think my father would now say, a resource is to be used but not abused. And I think that is what we've done time and again, not with trees, but with mining, with all of the public lands that we claim to be belonging to the people of this country. We will win. This move will survive. There will be a time when there will be no more cutting on public lands. But you are the people that have to make it happen. And you can make it happen because you have to keep the faith. Those who tell you that it can't be done, that the laws cannot be changed, know not of what they speak neither. And I guess the one thing I'd like to say in closing, I had on my desk for a long time, this is not going to be the exact words, but I think this is a message that I got from all the years I talked with the Forest Service. I'm sure you believe you understand what I am saying. However, I am not sure that you understand that what I said is not what I meant. Now you have to think about that a minute. But I think that says, to all the good people in the Forest Service, I congratulate them. But there were many who knowingly misled the public. And I say, in ending and closing this little talk, everybody talks about the line in the sand. Everybody talks about the line that we draw on the sand. I say it's time to put a chain across the logging road.